1919.
Yes. Yeah, it's like an angel number or something.
You know what they should do? Remember that movie 1917? They should make a sequel called 1919.
Brilliant.
And it's like,
brilliant idea.
What have they been up to since World War I?
Yeah.
You know? And it could be like, it's about Al Capone now. I'm just saying, give me a call, you know? All right?
So some of you might remember in our very first episode.
Hi, by the way.
Hello. Please don't interrupt me. No, I'm just kidding. I love when you interrupt me.
What did
we talk about in our first episode?
Al Capone.
Oh,
Alphonse Capone.
Oh, thank you.
You know who that
You're
is?
not on a nickname basis.
Let me mansplain to you for a second. He was a very important man.
No idea.
You don't know?
Honestly, I do black out after we record the episode.
You know what? I had podcaster friends who warned me of this. Like, you won't remember what you said. And I doubted it.
No, and then people will ask you about something. They'll reference a...
I said that? I have no idea.
Yeah, we take Ambien before we record.
We find it makes it more interesting as an experience.
Can you imagine? Well,
yes, I can.
This guy, pretty important guy to the mob. That's why he was the subject of our first episode. And now we're going to be doing something a little different. We're kicking off what they call in the podcast biz an arc.
An arc. Where's my arc? As Christopher Moltisanti says.
Every episode is going to be a self-contained story. You don't need to listen to the previous one to enjoy and love it. But it will be on the topic generally of Al Capone. That's how influential he was.
The life of Al Capone. I mean, listen, Ryan Murphy, if you're watching, we know, limited series, very hot right now. Okay?
Very hot. And we've got all the episodes planned. It's 10, right?
Sure. Now, here's the problem where I'm running into. I don't have a snappy name for this limited series we're doing about Al Capone, this arc of episodes.
What if, little known show, Yellowstone? I like that they just called it Yellowstone.
Not what I was expecting you to say, of all people.
Not just his influence. I think what's so interesting about Al Capone.
Let's go back. What about Yellowstone?
No, I can't.
Okay.
That's, by the way, you know that Yellowstone is referred to as Sopranos with chaps on?
Mm-hmm.
It is a mob show.
Mm-hmm. It is.
I think you would like it for that reason.
Listen, why are we talking? I've been obsessed with the Prince Andrew story as of late. Why?
Yeah, but so you draw the line at my man Kevin Costner.
No, I'm saying that's a mob story too.
Exactly.
Right? And that's why Al Capone, I think it speaks to the fact that Al Capone, it's so amazing. We're at the 100th anniversary this year of him ascending to be the boss of the Chicago mob.
Mm-hmm.
100 years. And even now, even though his reign lasted 7 years, depending on how you measure it, not that long a time, right? He is still if you go to Iceland, people are going to know who Al Capone is. Do you know what I mean? He is the archetype of the mobster even still. And why is that?
Why?
Why this guy of everyone, right?
Mm-hmm. And also the fact, his nickname was Snorky.
Not Scarface. Do not call him Scarface around him. Did not like that name one bit.
No, but Snorky works for him.
And he was little Snorky. His brother was big Snorky.
What does Snorky mean?
It's just cute.
It is
I've heard it described as a sharp dresser, which he was, but it's not even that. It's just, that's Snorky.
It's cute.
Yeah.
But okay, so he also had this internal conflict of, in many ways, kind of an endearing guy. He was in a love marriage at this time.
Yeah.
And I guess
he had one of those wives he liked. And
really rare in this culture.
We said in the first episode, right? David Lynch had the line, everything is about Marilyn Monroe to him. Well, everything is about Al Capone to me because, as you said, he's unremarkable in so many ways and such a regular guy in a lot of ways. And yet I will say this, I've tried to identify, what is the thing that makes this, why are we going to talk about him for so many episodes, right? Basically, right? What is so important about him? And it's not a lot of the details that get brought up because incidentally, with this guy, as with a lot of historical figures, it's hard to tell the true from the false. Lies have been repeated so many times that they've just taken on the patina. Even how he got his scars, the common accepted story, which we're going to talk about today, is fake. It didn't happen. There's stories about him being a cocaine addict. No, that's not true. About him working in Baltimore as an accountant. I said that in the first episode. It was in a biography. I've looked into it more. It wasn't true.
Accountability. Fact checking.
I'm not afraid to admit when I'm wrong in a small capacity on a podcast.
I wonder if his short reign is partially why, though, he's this mythical figure. It's kind of like if you're iconic in a short period of time.
Yeah.
It's almost more powerful.
Rather than fade away. I mean, listen, you hit upon, I think, what's the thing where he is exceptional. And what he's exceptional at is seducing the public. His mastery of public relations, the media. This is what sets him apart as a modern guy.
And this is the archetype they're all copying. John Gotti, we talked about him doing that.
Yes.
And perhaps not as successfully.
But
they got it from Al.
I think Donald Trump is influenced by this, and he doesn't even know it because he doesn't read. But that's okay. I mean, he's just doing it unconsciously, But and this is an important part of the rackets and modernizing the rackets and creating literally the outfit, which is he's able to seduce not just a city in the form of Chicago, but a country into this. And he almost gets to the point where he's too powerful to touch. And the story of how that happens, what he has to do in order to make that happen, really is a saga. And it's that one exceptional trait and the fact that he was born at exactly the right time that I think made Al Capone the man he is today, which doesn't mean he's easy to figure out. I think he's deceptively complicated, as we're going to find out. But we will find out.
We will. And so will you.
You ever had your shoes shined? Do women do that? Ever?
I don't think so. But I don't speak for all women.
That's good. I'm trying to think. I've never seen a woman getting her shoes
shined. Why not,
shined.
though? I mean, I'm like, we wear leather shoes as well.
I mean, it's possible. I think it would be weird for if you're in a dress and you're sitting up at one of those.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, first of all, I feel like this is only done, the only places I've seen it done is in New York.
Right.
In like the financial district or Midtown.
Right.
So there's just not a lot of opportunities depending on where you come from.
God, I hope that changes and girl bosses can do this. I'm tired of it.
I'm fighting for the shoe shining.
And specifically to get into Wall Street.
Exactly. But okay, that's where our story starts today.
Shoe shining.
With a little boy.
Shoe shining these horrible psychopath shoes in New York. One day.
I mean, that would corrupt even the purest boy.
It happens so quickly. Mm-hmm. Little Al Capone comes home one day. His dad says, got a present for you. And this is in the young Al Capone book. Surprisingly little written about young Al Capone.
You just walk around with that.
I mean, I do today. So one day, little Alphonse Capone comes home and his dad, Gabriele.
Beautiful language.
It's a beautiful language. Has a gift for him. It's a box with a leather strap. Inside the box, clasp, unclasp it. It's a shoe shine kit. So he can go out and earn some money. His older brother, Frank, had been given one and sold it. Not, it's a disappointment to an immigrant father. He wants Al to go out and earn some money with it at like 7 or whatever he is now.
Which we'll talk about a little later. But, at this time, the concept of a kid as a kid is relatively new in history.
This was a time when less than 1% of Italian Americans in New York City would make it to high school. It's
right.
The early 1900s. And so, work is a part of life. I mean, Italian laborers, they're earning $2 to $4 less than other workers, right? This is from John Kobler's book on Capone.
Yeah, and my grandparents were born a little later than the era we're talking about, in like 1915. But I recently looked up the census from, they lived in the tenements and then they were orphans because neither of their parents could afford to. They had so many kids, they had to just give some to the orphanage. But my grandfather's census, it's like all of the kids, their ages, it'll be like 7, 10, and then what they do for a living.
Right.
Tool and die.
Taxi
Like they're
driver.
already at
Yeah,
that age
right. Yeah.
being given jobs.
Yeah, I drive the A train. Yeah.
I'm 5.
Yeah, I'm 5. Yeah. Give me
Put a little booster on the seat.
Yeah. Give me my juice box. Yeah.
It's really fucked up, though, actually, I think. Can I say
is.
that?
And if you think that's dark, Al goes out on the street and instantly grasps, the best spots for shoe shining are taken by other guys. If I get my little gang of guys together, though, and we shake them down for protection, we don't even have to shine shoes to make money. We get money from them, right?
Wow. And so how old is he when he's doing this?
He's like 7. So listen.
Game recognized game.
And I'm not saying the die was cast. In fact, I don't think it was, right? But this is, to quote the title of another Mario Puzo book, this is the dark arena that Italian Americans have entered into. And consider the story of Capone's parents, right? Now, they emigrated from Campania in southeast Italy, south of Naples, from the same village, married over there. They moved to New York. Al is born 1899, January 1899. And he's one of, if I recall correctly, 7 kids. So like you said, a lot of children, right? And his father, they're working from the word go, right?
Mm-hmm.
His father's a barber, which actually puts him slightly better off than some people. I mean, they're still in poor neighborhoods in Brooklyn, around the Navy Yard, around this area, right? And it's not exactly the Godfather Part 2 experience, right? But clearly, if you have shoe shining racketing going on at that early an age, it's some pretty rough characters here, right? I will say, to your point about the work and all this, he was loved and cared for by his parents, right?
Which is another thing that I think is unique at this time. And obviously there's a lot of class differences, but I was actually talking to my mom about this episode and the fact that both my grandparents were in orphanages. My grandfather, because he had polio, and they were just like, we can't deal with you. And then I said, wow, like they must have had a lot of trauma from being in these orphanages. And my mom actually said, my grandmother said I was so lucky, actually, because when I went to the orphanage, I learned how to read and I learned how to sew. And my life is so much better than if I had stayed with like the 10 siblings with the abusive dad with no food. And so that's the context, right? That like being an orphan who no one wants to adopt is actually better than being with your family.
And this is why I feel like it's even hard now to talk about what the immigrant experience at this time was like, because we're doing it from 120 years later, basically. It's just like we're in the post Mario Cuomo governor like era where now Italian Americans are just whatever,
white people.
They're just whatever, they're fine. But like I try to we need to think about, Mexican, Central American refugees, the experience they're going through right now, which is obviously as nightmarish as it gets, in Europe, refugees from the Middle East and North Africa, the very dangerous conditions they're living under, right? Like this more approaches what it was like for these guys, right? And like to your point, 60% of Italians in New York at that time were illiterate, like this, like just every disadvantage. And yet, despite all that, despite what I'm saying about the shoe shining thing, which I think actually was quite common, not everyone who did that went on to become
Al Capone,
right? They, as then as now, immigrants were less predisposed to crime. They had lower criminal rates than native-born Americans. So,
tale as old as time.
We're still number 1. So he grew up with a lot of love, a lot of brothers, and I think people would not know this, was in many respects a good egg. He was heavily involved in the young men's either civic club, Catholic club, as it's described, putting together baskets for the hungry with his brother. Another unknown thing, I did not know this till I started researching it, a semi-pro baseball player as a teenager.
What?
Him and his brother Ralph were very involved in first amateur baseball, then semi-pro. And Al Capone was a pitcher batter, you know?
So I just feel like you're pretty well off if that at this time period as an Italian, if that's the kind of stuff you're doing, you're playing sports.
I think he was high average intelligence, relatively bright. He had some facility with numbers. The thing that people always remark upon is that he had quite a pleasant personality and was quite likable.
Charming.
Yeah, I would say he was. And he says, he says later, this is a quote from him, "I came to Chicago, obviously, with $40 in my pocket. My son is now 12. I am still married and I love my wife dearly. We had to make a living. I was younger than I am now and I thought I needed more. I didn't believe in prohibiting people from getting the things they wanted. I thought prohibition was an unjust law and I still do." Now, this is what I mean with the exceptionalism of him. Like how he spins taking that not comfortable, but loving, supported background into becoming a mob boss. He makes it actually sound quite reasonable.
This is a theme, at least in, coming from immigrants, being married into a family of immigrants, of the lore is always, I came with 5 cents.
Yeah.
And, honestly, and I think, I'm sure that's true in some cases, but it is interesting, the storytelling, aspect of that.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it's yeah, maybe it is true, you know? But does it justify what comes later? Well, who knows?
In this case, yeah. No.
So this speaks to the other positive quality that came out of this era, right? In Brooklyn, I should say, he was growing up near the Navy Yard section, a little south of, I think, Williamsburg. He meets May Capone, May Coughlin. Now, this is going to be the woman he marries. He's married to the entire rest of his life. It's a little unclear how they meet, but I thought it was charming that they show up in the social register, and this was uncovered by a historian named Mario Gomez, attending a masquerade party at the Coughlin house on Third Place. I love imagining a 17-year-old Al Capone at a masquerade party.
It's an eyes wide shut kind of a situation.
I mean, that's a dark spin on it.
Well, how did he get this May character? I mean, you talked about how he was charming. What did he look like? Was he an attractive guy that a young woman such as May would be interested in?
Not really, but let's take a look at what he looked like. First, at the height of his infamy.
Okay.
Right?
So,
now that's kind of the Capone we all know. This is his mugshot being arrested in Miami on vagrancy charges at the height of his power. This is sort of the chubby, balding, smiling face that is on every newspaper.
Right.
Right. This is what everyone knows from history. But taking a closer look, looking at some of the other photos we have here,
wow.
This is the other side of Al Capone, right? This is May Capone and Sonny Capone, who he's going to marry her the same in 1918, December 1918, after first having Sonny. So they did it a little backwards for that time. Yeah. They had him earlier in the month. Now, everything I've read about them is that they were really upstanding people, the both of them, and that he really loved his son and wife. Wasn't totally faithful.
Did he have some gumas?
Oh, yeah. I mean, his gumas, his women on the side are going to be what killed him, ultimately, actually. But May, like I said, is Irish-American, slightly more middle class than the Capone family, right?
Beautiful woman.
Very attractive woman. Later in life, dyes her hair blonde because she does go gray prematurely due to the stress of living with Al Capone, which is, I think, understandable, But overall, quite a lovely marriage. There's a beautiful letter that Capone writes to his son later in life when he's at Alcatraz, where he says, well, heart of mine, sure hope things come our way for next year. I'll be there in your arms, and maybe that sure will be a happy feeling for Maggie, May, and you. Sonny, keep your chin. Don't worry about your dear dad. And when you allowed a vacation, I want you and your dear mother to come here together, as I sure would love to see you and Maggie. So he was, quite a
doting father.
Yeah, he was. And, to your point about, well, what did she see in him? He was charming. He was a good dancer. He was very musical. He could play a lot of things on the mandala, as he called it, little Italian guitar, So he was a likable guy and well liked. Now, there's another side to some of this, right? Which is May being Irish. There is tension in the air about
not
this
dissimilar to the tension on this podcast.
Comes out every episode,
yes.
right?
Yeah, I mean, at this time, for an Italian and an Irish to get married, big deal.
It was. I should add, May's father was dead at the time they hooked up.
So that's why it happened.
I do not think is irrelevant to this happening,
yes.
right? So the Irish and Italian, there's a good book about it called An Unlikely Union by a guy named Paul Moses, tracing the history of the Irish and Italians in New York, of which I must say, I am a literal product, right? I am, granted, only a 16th Italian, but it's in the mix there, right? And there are some interesting reasons why Irish women tended to marry Italian men, which is the Irish men would wait to get
better
married.
Food.
Obviously. I mean, but they have to cook it, which
That's
is
true.
Which they could pick up. But my grandmother did. But Irish men tended to wait to get married in their 30s or 40s.
Really? Why?
Weird, unknown Irish reasons, Look,
but at that time, 30 to 40, you're going to die.
Well, that's it. It's like, I need to get married,
They only wanted a kid for like 1 year and they're out.
See ya. Yeah, good luck.
It's not like today having a kid at 30 or 40. I mean, I don't know what the life expectancy back then was. But
no, it was different. And it was, the other thing was the Irish were there first, right? The waves of immigration that started during the famine in the 1840s, that meant when they got to, this is something we talk about a lot, when they got to these urban cities, urban areas of America, they get all the best stuff first, right? They're discriminated against certainly by the WASPs and the Boston Brahmins and all that. But they get the police forces, the civil service, the judgeships, the firefighters, all that stuff, and the political machines, right? And it gets to the point when the Italians come along that there's a crazy, I found a crazy story in 1906 decrying how Italians are giving themselves Irish names. The committee was instructed to formulate, if possible, some plan that will prove effectual in stopping the practice of stuffing the criminal court records with Irish names.
Wow.
So genuinely quite a lot of tension, right? And this is mirrored, as that article gets at, in the underworld, which is around Capone at this time. Now, everyone and their brother has a little street gang that they run with at this time, right? It's not a big deal. It's not as,
So it's post Gangs of New York, but It
is. And we're going to talk about that era in a little bit too, because that's definitely formative here, right? But everyone and their brother has a little street gang that they're running with. And
I mean, whomst amongst
us,
I mean, I had one in the 90s in San Francisco.
Sure, they were real tough.
They're real tough.
Like it was, stupid teen boy stuff, right? But there's a more serious level with some of the older ones, these rival Irish and Italian gangs that are battling for control of the docks. And here you have some of the real birth of organized
What's happening
crime.
At the docks?
The docks, control over the docks, there's a nascent recognition that labor racketeering could be big business, right? So this is also going on in the background as Al's getting older, right? And we'll come back to that in a little bit. But the real thing that sort of alters the course of this life, I think, is what happens that same fateful month the same week that Sonny is born, right? His son. And a few weeks before he marries May is what happens on the night of December 8th, 1918. And it's, if we could take a look at the photo of Capone at the baseball game. Now, this is an amazing photo. It's an amazing photo. This is him at a baseball game in Chicago. On the left is a player named Gabby Hartnett coming over to sign a ball for Sonny Capone, who's in the middle there.
Who, can I just say, this kid, Sonny Capone, is just like so angelic.
He's very cute.
He's so cute.
He
has
seems
chubby
like
cheeks and light eyes, and the part in his hair is perfectly combed back.
He seems like a good boy.
He does.
Right? And Gabby Hartnett actually got a lot of shit for, this is Capone at the height of his power, by the way. The player got a lot of shit for signing a ball for Al Capone's son, and his defense was, he's just a kid. It doesn't matter who his father is, which I liked. But I'm bringing this up because you can see something Capone would always try to obscure in photographs of him, which is these 3 deep scars on the left side of his face. Now, this is an angle that he would typically not want people to see because of these 3 ugly scars.
And the bald spot, I would say.
You know what? He sort of embraced that.
Yeah, that's fine.
He was like, I got to go with it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I got to be me. But the scars are a little sinister and ugly looking. He would put talcum powder on it to hide them. But the story of how he got the scars is a little interesting in that it was always mistold later. The best putting it together from Mario Gomez, from the young Al Capone book, from his available newspapers and historical records are, he went to one of these dances at the YMCC or whatever.
How old was he?
He would have been, let's see, so this is 1918, so he would have been 19 years old.
Okay.
And he goes to the dance. He's loaded. Everyone's loaded there. He wasn't much of a drinker, but he was drinking at this time and said something rude about a fellow's sister. This is as best we can tell what happened. He retires to a nearby restaurant. The brother, Frank Galluccio, a hoodlum himself, comes over. There's a discussion. Galluccio also intoxicated. And at some point, he produces a knife and starts carving him on the neck, right? And there is a newspaper article about this. Alphonse Capone, 20, an Italian, born in America, I should add. Now, this is his story he gives. Was approached by 2 men last night on the street. One of them slashed his right cheek with a knife. That's wrong on which side. The wound was dressed by a doctor from the Methodist Hospital. Capone was unable to give the police the description of his assailants. That's from the Brooklyn Daily Times and found by Mario Gomez. Now, other eyewitnesses said it was a restaurant on Grand Street, and he made up that story so that he didn't have to, even at that time, stop snitching, not saying who did it, you know?
Well, I wonder, I mean, I would assume he didn't like people seeing it just because it's a scar on his face, but is it also because he sort of lost this fight? I mean, it doesn't make him look great that someone just came up, slashed his face, and that's it.
You know what's interesting? He actually became friends with the guy later, too.
What?
Galluccio. Yeah, they got along later. It was ironed out. And this speaks to the fact that I think all the smoothness he had, all the trying to ingratiate himself with society, the scars are like the physical manifestation of like what he doesn't want them to see, right? It's like there's a dark side to him that he cannot afford to have it be part of his image.
And it's right
there. And and that's why he hates the name
On
Scarface.
the other hand, it's great branding for him. I mean, he says he doesn't like it, but
It's sort of
there's a movie.
I mean, right. I mean, it's like, look,
sets him apart.
It certainly comes in handy when you want to scare the fucking shit out of somebody.
Exactly.
Which is what we're going to get to in the next act.
So we're going back in time.
You mentioned gangs in New York.
Yes, let's do it.
Marty, Leo,
we're available.
Daniel, Dave,
Lewis.
All the stars are here in this one, right? But did you know Gangs of New York was based on some real gangs of New York?
No, I had no idea.
This was not silver screen magic. I mean, it was, thanks to Marty, as I call him. But in addition, it was based on a real thing. Now, you mentioned the Gangs of New York because Al Capone, at the time he's born in 1899, he's not being born into a vacuum. All those out there who thought Al Capone was born in a vacuum, common misconception.
You know, a wise woman once said, you didn't just fall from a coconut tree. You exist in a context.
Was that Kamala's? Oh, sorry. Our producer's going like, yes.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Yes, queen.
Yeah. Okay.
But that's what she was talking about, Al Capone.
There was a context of criminality, organized crime, and gangs in New York, perhaps of New York, which were quite colorful, but which really, he was one of the guys who sort of sharpened over time. So let's go back. When Al Capone was like a toddler, September 15th, 1903. There's an amazing anecdote that sort of sums this up to me, where it is election season in New York, as it is right now, as we're recording, in fact. And the way it works at that time is organizations like Tammany Hall, the Democratic political machine in New York, have criminals go out and they call them repeaters, get repeat voters to go out and vote and force people to vote multiple times, right? For their favored candidates. And in this case, they have two gangs that are out doing this. The first is the Monk Eastman gang. Now, if you were to look at a photo, we have so many photos today, we can't go into it. Monk Eastman looks like if Shrek was a bare-knuckle boxer, okay? He is, please go. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just need to
process that image for a second. Then look it up later.
And he has the name to fit it.
Monk Eastman, yeah. And Monk Eastman, at one point, I think he dodges prison by enlisting in World War I and just has a blast there. He's the guy who has the most fun.
He's the guy that has a blast
in World War I. Like, he shows up and he's like,
I'm ready.
And the doctor like does the examination of him and is like, did you fight in the war already? And he was like,
are you a swamp being?
Yeah.
Do you live in a swamp?
So that's Monk Eastman on the one hand.
Okay.
His gang is marauding through Manhattan, very pleased with their work with the repeaters that day. And they get into a massive brawl with another gang, which leaves two of their numbers dead. Now, Monk Eastman, to me, is very much a 19th century gangster. He's what these gangs of New York guys are like,
and
right?
What's the difference in your opinion?
I think we can see the difference with Paul Kelly,
Okay.
just in a look at him. Now, so here we have a newspaper from the era, right? Monk Eastman is up here, looking Shrek-like.
That really was a great description of him.
This is what I do, folks. This is just what I do, all right? But here we have Paul Kelly.
Okay, so the glamour of the mob, the sort of clean cut, that is a 20th century thing.
Paul Kelly, real name, Paolo Vaccarelli, one of the many Italian criminals changing his name to an Irish name to fit in, is one of the most interesting figures in American criminal history, and he's not that well known, and I find that interesting. He also mentored Al Capone and is one of the founding fathers of modern organized crime.
He's on Mount Rushmore.
He is. He's on the Mount Rushmore. Paul Kelly is, I think his gang, the 5 Points Gang, is in some ways the first modern mafia in American history. First modern mafia family. And like you said, it's apparent from just looking at him, he's able to play the part of the smooth businessman.
To be a successful mobster, I feel like you need to exist in both the underworld and the upper world. And that requires a suit sometimes.
This is what I mean. And this is really revolutionary at that time. I mean, look at these other cavemen that he's dealing with here, right? Like Monk Eastman is not able to pass in high society, right?
Right.
Like you would turn a hose on him probably. He's just so gross and smelly and disgusting,
yes.
You know? But Paul Kelly, different story, speaks multiple languages. Now, this all masks the fact that he's, like Eastman, a fighter, a boxer. They box multiple times to settle their disputes. Like, it's crazy shit.
Paul Kelly is pretty beautiful, too.
He's a handsome guy, right? And
great bone structure.
What else?
Great eyebrows.
He's got the eyebrows.
Yeah, but he also just takes care of himself. It looks like.
He's eating right.
Yeah, he is.
He's working out a little. You know?
So this is Gangs of New York that you're talking about?
This sort of comes out of Gangs of New York, right? Like, this is the guy who takes Gangs of New York and ushers it into the 20th century.
Got it.
Right? A smooth mafia boss who can also deal with the politicians, deliver the votes on election day, right? The New York Times in 1912 says, Eastman, Kelly, others were credited with inventing the modern system of repeating at the polls. But Kelly is a mild-mannered, soft-spoken little man who is diplomatic in conversation and only reproachful of his enemies, the police, right? Now, why are we talking so much about Paul Kelly in the Al Capone episode? Paul Kelly also has a strategy of really like developing criminal talent. The same way a baseball team would, which Al Capone is familiar with. He has a farm team. What he does is he forms these athletic associations that are really like feeders for criminals.
Wow. That's so interesting.
Yeah. And develops them as boxers.
He's an agent.
Baseball.
You know?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Baseball players, all this sort of thing. Who is among them?
We already know Al Capone's good at baseball.
That's right. 6th grade dropout Al Capone is among them. Now, like I mentioned, Al Capone has dropped out of school. Stories differ on how this happened. It has something to do with a fight with a teacher, right? Either a principal beat him, then he hits a female teacher, and that leads to him leaving. Or there's a slightly more sympathetic one where he's in a fight with another student over the student stealing food and punches the male teacher. But in any event, he leaves school never to return. And actually, the Balsamo book at that time says the truant officers reached out and were trying to help him. But his family, not having even a full grasp of English, were just fearful that he was going to be in legal trouble. That's the Balsamo account of it. So could Al Capone's life have taken a different course if he, returned to school or just not dodged a truant officer? I don't know. But part of the problem is, and this is where I really blame these older gangsters, they're also, as much as
predators.
That's it, right? As much as there's maybe Al Capone as a teenager, making these decisions, there's this whole criminal underbelly of older men sucking them in. And these are the guys who I think deserve a lot of the blame here.
So if you're Kelly, what qualities do you think you would look for in a kid that you think would make them great?
So he wants kids who are tough, who can handle themselves, who have some brains, but not, maybe too much in the way of brains, who can be trusted with an envelope of money, and who will basically do what he says. And in this case, also are situated in Brooklyn near the docks, which he is trying to take over. That's something else that's going on.
So Capone really fits the bill.
Capone fits the bill, and he's going to do so under the tutelage of an even grosser, more horrible guy, and that is Frankie Yale, who we need to take a look at now. Now, if Paul Kelly is sort of the top boss, right? Frankie Yale, one of the graduates of the Paul Kelly finishing school, is sort of the closest thing to a Al Capone style mob boss that existed this time in Brooklyn. He's a hitman. He is an arsonist. He's a mob boss. He has a lot of guys. If you look at the ranks of Frankie Yale gang alumni, you have the leaders of the 5 families of New York.
Wow.
You have the guys who are staffing the Chicago outfit. It is a who's who of that.
He's
right?
the dean of a college.
Yeah.
Yale.
Right. Like, okay, Paul Kelly says you're good. Let's pass you off to Frankie Yale. Now, here's him as a young man. Here's him as an older man.
Wow.
In the middle, we have his cigar factory, where he made possibly the most disgusting cigars ever invented by man.
You've tried them?
I tried smoking a cigar once. I nearly threw up. I was like, what am I doing? I'm not a cigar guy. What am I doing? This is not, I don't like smoking, Goodbye. And I never went back to that
Good for you.
establishment with Rudy Giuliani at his cigar bar. But no, so what Frankie Yale would do, here's another perfect scam. In addition to being an undertaker, which is terrifying, he had a funeral home as a front.
That is very scary.
I mean, he literally...
you can't get him in trouble for having dead bodies in his house when he's an undertaker.
Oh, he would literally say to intimidate people, I'm an undertaker, and it wasn't even a lie. Isn't that amazing?
That's incredible.
Right? He ran the ice rackets in Brooklyn, delivering ice to places, to homes.
And how would they racket that, I guess?
It's like you got to buy from him.
Yeah.
Same way with the cigars, right?
It's like the trash.
Like the trash,
but
right?
Ice.
The cigars are even better. You have to sell Frankie Yale cigars or I will kill you. And it doesn't matter that they suck and are terrible, right? Frankie Yale is the kind of guy who, in one account, is attending a niece's wedding, wants his mother and father to dance on the dance floor, so he shoots at her feet. His own mother. I'm just saying, this
Not a healthy guy. Not a normal guy.
This is who this is. But, so Al Capone learns all about the strong arm tactics of Frankie Yale, which again, that's going to be, how he gets things done. The hammer, right?
So who do you think was more influential in Capone's sort of
The most
rise.
influential is the guy we're going to talk about in the next episode, who I'm slightly avoiding.
Okay.
That's John Torrio. He's the third guy in this holy trinity, right? Unholy trinity, we'll call it. And he's the guy who's going to bring him to Chicago. But the important thing to know, or really tutor him in Chicago, the important thing to know about Frankie Yale is that without him, Capone never gets to Chicago, right? That's what the young Capone
He never
books.
becomes Capone.
He never really becomes Capone, right? It is for Frankie Yale almost certainly that Al Capone commits his first murder at 17 or 18. Al Capone is working at the Harvard Inn on a seaside walk in Coney Island, owned by Frankie Yale. Frankie Yale, I should add, real name Frankie Uwale, changed it to Yale. He's from Calabria in southwest. It's like the toe of the boot of Italy. And as a joke, being his last name's Yale, he calls it the Harvard Inn. So the joke later is...
He has a sense of humor, too.
Yeah, Capone went to Yale and Harvard, right? So all this is to say, with this thug now influencing him, right? He certainly gets him to murder his first victim either at the Harvard Inn or possibly at a card game. Al Capone is really on a path that he's never gonna break from now.
With so many of these mobsters, we see they're sort of attracted to these strong male figures because they don't have one. But Al Capone did have a dad who seemed to be a loving father. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question because Gabrielli, some accounts I have read indicate that Gabrielli possibly had an alcohol problem. We know that he was a barber. He later owns a pool hall and is a scratch pool player. He's clearly unable to, however, keep these crazy boys who are running around.
Like, how does he feel about it?
Well, that's it, right? Like, he was a respected man in the community. When he dies in 1920, there's an enormous turnout on the streets for him, enormous grief, and like, he's a respected man. I would say the closest thing to a guy who could have gone the other way with him is Al Capone's oldest brother, Vincenzo, who used to take him out to Staten Island and he loved horses. So they would go on horse rides together through Staten Island, and he kind of tried to show him a different way of life. Now, we're going to talk about Vincenzo in a later episode because he becomes the most unlikely job. He's going to take on the most unlikely job you could possibly imagine for the older brother of Al Capone to take. And I don't want to ruin that right now. But he goes away at a young age. So he does go away at a young age. So you're right. I think young boys and young men are always looking for someone to fill that, right? And he does find it on the streets. Like, what's right, what's wrong. And unfortunately, he gets it from just some of the worst people you could get that from, you know? And I'll start to wrap up by saying, like, what happens is he is unfortunately very well placed in time to become what he becomes, right?
Yeah, it's not just all about how great he was. I mean, a lot of forces had to come together.
So he has the political tutelage of Paul Kelly to begin with, right? Of creating these institutions, these organizations that can do this, right? He has Frankie Yale just turning off the humanity in him.
It's the brawn and the brains. He's getting both.
That's right. And they're going to rocket to the next dimension with John, who is going to bring him out in Chicago, really make him, John Torrio, make him the mob boss he is today. The waves are breaking. Italian Americans are breaking through too. And this is going to catalyze in the form of Al Capone, just not in New York. So it raises the question, how does he get to Chicago?
Yeah, that is a good question.
1919 is a very big year for Al Capone, right? Married, son, slashing,
It's also a powerful number.
It's an awesome, 1919.
Yes, yeah, it's like an angel number or something.
You know what they should do? Remember that movie 1917? They should make a sequel called 1919.
Brilliant.
And it's like,
brilliant idea.
What have they been up to since World War I?
Yeah.
And it could be like, it's about Al Capone now. I'm just saying, give me a call, all right? 1919, but now he's more or less actually just a criminal, right? Now, I should say, Al Capone has worked other odd jobs in this time, right? He's married. He's going to have a kid to support, right? But he's also doing jobs for Frankie Yale outside of the Harvard Inn, right? Not just tending bar, being a
And
bouncer.
why is that? Because
He can
he
handle
needs some
himself.
legitimate cover, or there's not enough money just doing crime?
I mean, I think you actually need Frankie Yale wants tough guys working the door at his bar,
Yes, yeah.
right? And he can trust him. Yeah, that's the main thing. He can trust Al Capone, right? He's done a good job guarding his money and guarding John Torrio's money. So he has him collecting. He has him going into these Irish areas to collect. And there is an incident in which Capone is in a bar in an Irish area. And there is some sort of disagreement with a fellow named Arthur Finnegan, a.k.a. Crisscross Finnegan. Great nickname.
Yeah, how do you get that?
I've heard a couple explanations for this, like that he crosses lines, that he gets arrested a lot. Like, I'm not entirely clear.
Either way, we can agree that it's a great nickname.
It's a great nickname. It's a great nickname for a low-level foe, which is what he
exactly,
is, right?
Exactly.
Crisscross Finnegan, what an asshole,
Yeah, exactly.
In any event, the disagreement, one book says there's a disagreement in the bathroom that Finnegan was drunk and pissed on his leg. That's one. Another is that he's making jibes about Italians who marry Irish, which is a recurring theme with some of these disputes. But the point is, Al Capone beats the fucking shit out of him, which is kind of cool. I mean, I'm just going to editorialize for a second, okay?
That you're okay with.
Yeah.
Battery.
Well, wait a minute. Finnegan is a member of the Irish gang running the docks at this time. So he's a crook too, right?
Okay. Crook on crook crime is fine.
Yeah, and he's starting shit with him, and he got told what's what, you know? The point is, this is going on at a bad time, right? Because the Paul Kelly effort to take over the docks, take over labor racketeering there, is starting to get extremely violent. And the leader of that gang, the White Handers, the Irish dockers, Wild Bill Lovett, wants revenge. It is going to set in forth, I don't think as directly as people say it does, but it's going to set in motion a series of events that lead to Al Capone moving to Chicago and becoming the Al Capone we know today. Now, his fate is sort of ping-ponging here. Like, there's a fascinating series of discoveries about him receiving checks from a plumbing supply company. Was it a front? Was it legitimate work? We'll probably never know, right?
Yeah, that goes back to my earlier question of why he would have a legitimate job at all.
Right. I mean, part of it is that, like you said, like, he's probably not supporting a family on working for Frankie Yale, because there's a lot of these thugs doing that, right? But he does need to support them. Like I said in that quote earlier, like, when he moves to Chicago, he doesn't have that much money, and there's going to be some added pressure that goes on. In November of 1920, his father dies, right? So, now he has to kind of support his mother and siblings too, right? He has a younger sister. Like, this is a lot of pressure. Even though he has older brothers, right? He's taking it upon him. So the combination of the pressure from these Irish gangs, right, who are killing each other left and right, and the fact that he really has to support this, and finally that John Torrio, the third of these mentors I've mentioned, has made a move to Chicago, sees an open city, and is inviting him to come out and join him. And so Al Capone, after the father's funeral, starts making the first serious, he probably was moving back and forth between Chicago and New York, but he more permanently moves there, starts popping up in the phone book and in the newspapers as Al Brown, which is his pseudonym he takes, that he's a secondhand furniture dealer on his business card.
That's a really funny fake job.
I would put first hand furniture. Like,
You wouldn't be selling antiques?
If I had to have a fake job, I think I would just say, I'm a furniture dealer or I'm an antique dealer. I'm not like, don't sell.
Secondhand, yeah.
No, Al Capone, know your value.
Know your worth.
Know your worth,
Question though, you said that the crisscross incident led to this.
Mm-hmm.
What happened with that?
Well, so he has it in his head that he has a target on his back and that at some point they're going to get him, right?
Okay.
Like, because
they want revenge.
they do. And he knows, like, it could be a couple years go by and then one of these guys just sees me on the street and shoots me, right? It's like a matter of time here.
Did he kill Crisscross?
He almost did. They thought he was going to die, but he pulled through. He crisscrossed away from going to hell. But, so Al Capone, with that pugilistic thing in mind, is also a boxing promoter. He manages boxers at that time. He starts popping up in the newspaper for that. Now, this is all a front for the fact that in Chicago, he's working at a brothel. That's his real job, right? And he's working for John Torrio, working for the mobsters there. We're going to get into that next time. But as you said, there's unfinished business back in New York, right?
Oh, yeah.
And he remembers his friends. Frankie Yale remains a good friend. The relationship does go sour later. And it'll be interesting to talk about that. But Frankie Yale develops a nice sideline of going to Chicago for Al Capone to kill people that need to be killed.
Okay.
Okay. LaGuardia to O'Hare.
Just bring your guy. Fly your guy over.
Yeah. Stay a night. Airport Hilton. Take the blue line in. I'm going to say get off at Clark and Lake.
Okay. Just do a little assassination.
You know what? No. South Loop. Say Madison.
Okay.
Get off at Madison. You're going to walk on over there. You're going to say, hey, Al, who needs to die today? He's going to point you in the right direction.
So Al wouldn't just kill them himself or have a henchman in Chicago? Why is he bringing in?
This is why this guy got to where he is. What a professional. He sets up an alibi for himself and his boys. Mr. Frankie Yale comes in, kills the guy. He says, I was playing cards all night here.
Wasn't me.
Wasn't me. What are you talking about? You're crazy, right? But Al Capone being such a good friend, he's going to pay back those Irish hoodlums. He's going to give them armats like you've never seen before, okay?
Okay.
And
I'm excited.
In 1925, 100 years ago, he's going to do a Frankie Yale. He's going to go to New York City.
He's going to take care of it himself.
Oh, yeah. And this is, look, am I glorifying criminality?
You love Al Capone. Let's just say that. You got a little bit of a blind spot with this guy. He's the apple of your eye.
How do I answer this? Okay, I guess I do. But look, I have no defense, all right? But I'm sorry, this is
Well, he killed a lot of people. How many people do you think Al Capone killed? There's the killings that he ordered and then...
Counselor, relevance, sustained. But watch yourself,
Okay, just saying.
It's unclear. I will say, at some point he retired from murdering people personally.
Yeah. I like that in this world, you're a good person if you have someone else kill people.
His jersey went up in the rafters at some point.
Okay.
But it was not in 1925. I'll tell you that much.
No, it was not.
Okay?
Okay, so he's like, I'm going to go and take care of Crisscross myself, finally.
So he's going to do the Frankie Yale tactic where Frankie Yale asks him to come in from out of town to handle this thing for them. And I think that is how it happened. Sometimes what follows is described as a drunken row that got out of control. But I think Al Capone being in New York for it, being on the scene, indicates it was planned. And Al Capone has a perfect alibi. He's bringing his son, Sonny.
Cute little Sonny.
The reasons for this are disputed, but Sonny had problems with his hearing his whole life and he had a mastoid infection, had to have it removed, and it left him partially deaf. Now, in later historiography covering this, a lot is going to be made of the fact that could possibly be due to syphilis that he inherited from his mother, who got it from Al. Now, syphilis is what ultimately kills Al Capone. He got it working in a brothel in Chicago. We'll talk more about that later. But this may be why Sonny lost his hearing. Working
in
a way,
the brothel.
that's work, So
he had to test out, what he was offering.
I don't want to be coarse, but if you worked at a car lot, you'd kick the tires. Okay, that's all I'm saying. All right, it's just
Got it.
And we'll cut that out. But look, here's the thing.
Okay.
Al brings Sonny to New York for the surgery on the mastoid infection.
Oh, that's
the cover. So if anyone
they're
asks,
always using their kid.
It's amazing. So if any cop pulls him in and says, "What are you doing here, Capone?"
My
He
poor
says,
son.
"My son is going deaf here. I need to get him a surgery," right?
Couldn't do it in Chicago.
There's no doctors in Chicago. There still aren't. It's ridiculous. The very idea, right? So while he's in New York, though, and it's Christmas time, which I love.
Yeah, that really adds to the
It-
cinematography of the story.
I think so. When we adapt it, it's going to be great. So
It really is. Snow's falling.
snow's falling.
Lights are twinkling.
Christmas decorations inside the Adonis Social Club on 20th Street in Brooklyn. And what do you know, but the White Hand Gang enters, led by...
And why are they called that?
It is possible it came out of, frankly, a racist reaction to Italians, which is that the Black Hand is an extortion tactic used by Italians. So the White Hand is sort of a knowing dig at the Irish being, white in comparison, right? Now, Pegleg Lonergan is, I'm serious. That's what they would have said.
You're just, so casually, you just, peg leg.
Oh, well, Pegleg, okay, Pegleg Lonergan's the leader of these guys. He fucking has a peg leg. What do you want me to say? He has an actual peg leg. I've seen the crime scene photos. His fucking crutches are leaning against the door, okay?
Wow.
So, yeah. So Pegleg Lonergan's the leader of the White Hand Gang. He comes in, he rolls up in this club, a place where Al Capone used to do target practice in the basement.
Uh-oh.
And him and his Irish rabble they're drunk, and they start making a scene. There's racist blathering about Italians. And interestingly, Al Capone later tells police, while he's in New York for this surgery, he just picked up a little extra work as the doorman for the Adonis Social Club.
Oh.
Total coincidence.
So it doesn't...
Just... You know that thing where you go to another town for your son's surgery and you get a job?
You're a traveling bouncer. You're like a traveling nurse.
I make more money in New York as a bouncer.
I get a higher rate.
Yeah. So these fucking hoodlums are drunk, causing trouble, and someone turns out the lights. And before these guys can do anything, pop, 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 pop.
Oh, yeah, it just happened, but someone turned the lights off.
Yeah. A account says that all 20 patrons managed to flee in time to not see or hear what had gone down.
What about peg leg, though?
Oh, peg leg's fucking dead leg, okay? Fucking get a jump start on that coffin for peg leg,
oh
okay?
My God.
I've seen the photos. He is going for his gun. He's dead. One of the guys they kill, they drag out into the street. Another is found crawling away, barely alive. But 3 White Hand members are dead, including the 2 leaders of the gang. And
where's Capone? Just in the front. Hold on.
Yeah.
I love that the bouncer is supposed to prevent this from happening. No? That's literally the job of a bouncer.
Humans are fallible. What? If I don't do my job perfectly 100% of the time, I'm fired? Just because 3 people are killed?
Like, a New York bouncer won't do. We need to get my guy from Chicago to come in and bounce. And then there's some murders that happen that night.
I have a bad feeling about December. Call Chicago, right? Of course, he's hauled into jail along with like 7 to 10 other guys, right? And the NYPD knows what's up. They know they planned it, but they can't prove it. They get released on bail. No one is ever charged in the murders, right? But I take it to be like he's gotten his revenge on these guys, right? It is a slow but steady move that the New York docks are completely taken over by the nascent Italian-American mafia. And by this time, Al Capone back in Chicago is going to become the boss of bosses, right? Become the guy that we know today, right? But it only happened through all these different little hinge points that he could have maybe gone another way. He didn't, By the time you're murdering 3 people, right? And like you said, using his son as a cover for that, you've lost something that I don't think you can easily get back, And we're going to talk about how that happened next time